And I wasn't even speaking loud.
Yeah.
I can whisper and you can hear me.
Yeah. Do you want?
Sounds good?
Yeah, it's loud. You guys both there.
Yeah.
And this is where Jose, we have this in that back closet. So if he's in here and he's seen people like, ugh, he can go in and just start to adjust your volume
Okay,
as you're
perfect.
speaking.
So were you the one that recorded, Jose, or was it Jonathan? You recorded the audio for the tour?
Oh, he did,
I
yeah.
haven't listened
You're
to it
in
yet.
the quote of Ferré. Yes.
Thank
I
you for
forgot
doing
you guys
that.
collaborated.
I haven't listened to it. I forgot to
Um,
scan it yesterday. I'll go up later.
I think, yeah, it turned out good. One more thing, like at the end, there'll be hopefully time for Q and A, depending on, how things go. And so Jose will go around and have people ask their question into the microphone so that everyone hears, but so that we capture the question for the recording.
Okay.
Sometimes people are just like, I have a question. If you, and they just start. If you happen to have the presence of mind at the time to repeat the question,
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, so the question was, that would be a way for us
Okay.
to capture it, but
You're
like,
fine.
don't sweat it. It's not,
Remember.
but, and that also means that if for some reason you're talking about something and you're wanting to move and show something, you can, but we're gonna lose your audio when you
Okay.
start to drift. Yeah. And then the last thing is we don't use the clicker anymore. I don't know if you want to point anything out. If you do, just use the mouse because
Okay.
then it's captured for the recording, kind of what that is. Yeah, but that's
Sounds good.
kind of it. I don't know if you want to click through, make sure everything looks good. Did you want me to put that monitor on or are you just not going to use it? Okay.
And then do you want to draw on the house lights as well to make certain Iraida can see me go? And
Yeah. Oh, let me do this for you, Iraida. I'm gonna turn on this for you.
Check, check.
And yeah, I'll turn.
You
the
know, I don't
microphone.
think I need them because I have
We can turn it off.
So I see you better with or without the lights.
You guys. Is,
No, literally turn on the phone and go like that.
So I'll put like 10. 5.
That's the problem, man. No,
no,
that's the problem.
so I'm just gonna have to be like, hold it like.
Well, that's why I said, oftentimes we'll say, okay, now we have time for questions. Hey, just, as a heads up, the microphones are quite loud. You might want to hold them from, because people will scream into them and. It's, yeah. it's because we're all in the
Look at they're
same-
smoking.
There's smoke.
There's, I see like smoke. But you
ju-
can
oh,
turn them
yeah.
off. I don't need them.
We just replaced the light bulbs yesterday.
And it smells like it's
We'll get them
burning.
off.
Yeah.
Hooray for iPads.
That's crazy.
Pretty much it.
So
Look
Iraida
at my
looks
mom.
on. So can you see me here? Or,
I can see you here.
okay, and then, yeah, at the 2-minute mark, is this too distracting for everybody else?
I don't think so. Just turn it on. Like, I don't mind at all. Yeah. Perfect.
1 minute.
Do that.
Yeah.
Feel free to do it.
Yeah, we just have, because you have the gallery talk right after.
Mhm.
We have got to stay on time. And then I will get you to exit out these doors, you can get some water.
Yeah.
Rest a minute and then.
And I don't think I'll get in much into the works, only like play music. So I'll leave out all that for the gallery talk, yeah.
So Robin, Bridget, Jose just asked a question. Yes. How do you guys want to handle the lights? Typically, when I would do lectures, full house lights, I do the welcome, invite the speaker, run to the back, turn the lights down. But now that Amanda's like, do you want Jose to turn the lights down before Amanda? Do you
Yes.
want, so Amanda walks up, lights.
I don't even
down.
think we wait, in my opinion, we don't even wait for Amanda. The minute it hits 10:30, you just turn the lights down.
Oh, like in the movie.
It started. And then if Amanda gets up 5 minutes later, she gets up 5 minutes late. But
The only, just think about safety for people too, like, And sometimes I know you're thinking, you might start at 10:30 hard, but,
Yeah.
and
That
that's
doesn't mean
great, but
everything.
sometimes you can tell there was an accident, people were late or whatever, and you might want to hold for a few minutes.
I think today we should start hard.
I agree.
It's a different thing today. All the schedules.
I get it, the
And
dawn.
as people come in, should we have like a flash, like, is there something I can do in the back, so I'm just wanting to get in that would maybe assist, like I can grab a flashlight?
But it'll be this bright,
It'll be
right?
this.
It could be, but you
I
have to be
I
like,
want to respect your
Yeah,
understanding
no,
of
no,
these
no, no.
people, because I know you know better than me how.
If you
I
could,
think you'll keep an eye on it, just so, I know a lot of our members are over and.
Yeah, absolutely.
so here's what I think we'll do, we'll open the doors 15 minutes earlier since we are gonna have a party.
Okay.
So instead of 15 minutes early, the doors are gonna open at 10:15 versus 10.
I don't know, I don't think that's necessary, because it's such a short distance. I mean, we can play that by
I
ear.
was just gonna give it a little bit more time to get everybody. But I'm-
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule to see when I can go up and take more pictures.
Take more pictures.
I did a little video.
Yes.
I got
I'm surprised we
inspired.
haven't gotten guys' pictures yet.
Maria Luisa, our board president, she got moved by my little video that I did.
Oh, you want to think?
Oh.
So I went through the whole gallery with the little piano music in the background. I'll share it with you later.
Yes,
So I went all the way through, the way through.
nice.
And I don't know how this program does it, but it like
Makes it fit
gets in
perfect.
sync. And then look at this. I don't even know how this happened. Because I was in the Boston first, and then I moved to
But we do need someone up front checking.
the other galleries, and then I have little signs.
Are you sure you don't?
Look at that.
And
What
just right,
happened?
perfect. Did you pause the video?
Literally, the music is just one chunk.
Chunk.
So I just added, like, put the three things together. So I'll share them with you later.
Okay, wonderful. Judith tucked away in my office, I think she's playing Pac-Man, so.
Oh, boy, here's a video game, doesn't get down a lot.
I know, I was joking, but they have one, but he didn't know.
Josh has a Switch and his rule is that you have to play like with somebody, like with your sister, or like it must be a social thing. And then I just have to sit in there and watch.
I know.
But Jude wants to see the show.
Oh, good, good.
Deborah's puppy is home. Look, he got home.
Oh my God.
Baby. He is exhausted.
I mean, it saved us the video sometimes.
Yeah. I'm having a taste down. And today Betty and Laura are here, so.
So we get whatever we get.
We get what we get and we don't throw it.
You know, I don't wanna cause any trouble. But the coffee is cold.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't add that much milk. Yeah. Yeah. You know that I actually brought one. The many ones that I got from the hotel and I haven't used.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, like, I think because it's so cold outside. Like,
Oh.
the potatoes for dinner were absolutely rock, really solid. And, and I think because we sat down late for dinner, that's why the, meat was overdone, because I think it continued cooking them.
Yeah.
Wait, oh, were you talking about the lender's dinner?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so I didn't have to meet.
But mine was fine. Yeah, it was maybe a little bit. It could have been a little bit less good,
Yeah.
but it was good. It was good.
Goodness, was this light?
Is that like
I
a?
love the vacuums that have the light. It's like you can see everything.
That sometimes is not good.
And I'm like,
Oh, I let this happen.
you all around.
That's a cute little vacuum.
Uh-huh.
We have two people waiting up there. Wait, what's it then?
I guess I'm just gonna take that, Robin.
Well, yeah, what time is it right now? 52? Yeah, we don't have guards ready.
Actually 46.
I know it's cold.
Oh, I was reading that one.
That one's not, that's what, that,
It's a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's 47 now.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's like 5 minutes, right?
yeah.
Every like couple
Unless
months.
guards are ready. But no, I think it's best to wait. Because catering isn't ready, guards aren't ready. Yeah. Now that I'm like basking the whole lot of.
I can like see everything.
I'm like, oh my word. We need to get Laura and Betty one of these with. I'm also gonna come in with a brown marker and take care of that.
What is that? Is that just a scrap?
Yeah, we did it.
I think you're all set. The temperature is actually good in here too. Not too cold.
Now, did you put a work order in?
Me? No.
Yeah.
It's so cold outside. I was promised that it was gonna get warmer and it didn't.
When do you fly out?
Tomorrow,
Oh, no.
when it gets warm. Yep,
70. At least Puerto Rico must be,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that.
So at least you're not going to like Toronto.
No.
Returning home. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we didn't even, it didn't even register how cold it was gonna be. So I brought like the very light jacket. Deborah didn't even bring a jacket.
Yeah, it was, and then you forget, or I forget that at night it's gonna get that much colder too, you know?
So I've been cranking up the heat in the room. It feels like the Caribbean in there.
Lovely. All right. I think it. Maybe a little over here, but
There is two waters.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. They were gonna go to Phoenix this morning and go find Camelback, but then they're like, eh. So they woke up at 4 and they're like, oh.
When is it that you're leaving for your Texas expedition?
It's spring break, but Friday.
I get so confused that
They moved it.
They
it's
changed it all the
different.
time.
SMU spring
Yeah.
break is a week later than our kids' spring break, and I keep getting them in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna say, is it the 14th or the 18th?
No,
Something like
that's
that.
SMU.
That's SMU, so the week before.
Yeah.
It's like the second week of March.
Yeah,
Also, that's soon.
It is soon.
it is soon.
Oh.
Exactly, it's what?
So it's going Mexico
Yeah, the 8th through the 15th.
and the route is like Mexico and all the Western,
Honduras.
yeah, like Central America.
Yeah, so we're gonna do like, the archaeological tours. I'm like, we can skip a beach one day. Do the
Yeah.
Pyramids.
Yay.
But you should do it even more than one day.
I-
That's so amazing. I'm sure they're gonna love it. Maybe you should do that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've done
That's funny.
bits and pieces of it.
Are you gonna film their reaction when you tell them the realities? That'll be awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna like drive into the parking lot, like, oh, we're stuck in this big long line. Oh, as well. So that should be good.
Memories.
All right, I'm gonna go get, a brown marker. You wanna get June? Yeah, and then you grab June, we're probably gonna go see the show, and then put on.
Yeah, it's been on for a day. Good luck with the talk today.
Thank
Is it
you.
recording over here? You said it is this week. Okay, is the green box not around?
I know, now you have me doubting. Let me check again, but I believe it is. And then they've moved there used to be, oh yeah, look.
Your screen sharing, recording.
Yeah, we're good.
Good, good, good. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll be.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh. My brown marker, but.
Oh my gosh. We definitely have to do better with telling people what's happening with the museum. But people keep on asking, like in social media, when are you open? Where can we go now and see the, like, people don't register.
I'm like, oh, we're seeing, you're putting stuff up.
Yeah,
You know, well,
it's
on view in
open. Let's
Dallas.
go. We're getting a new comms person and a social media person. Hopefully
Yeah.
soon.
That'll help.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we had
long overdue. We had a great team, but they're not with us anymore.
Yeah, we had a company that was doing ours. And then it just.
That's what happened with us. They hired an external company and it destroyed the communications department. And one of them was fired and the other one left. They couldn't handle it anymore. And they didn't know what they were doing. It was hard. A nightmare.
Exactly, and it was just. There was no personality, there was no,
Mhm.
understanding of what we were.
They wanted to control everything and wouldn't listen to oh, it was a nightmare. I'm so happy that it's over.
Yeah.
But then we lost a really, really good social media person who had been at the museum for like 12 years. Who literally, I'm gonna see. I can just,
Yeah.
because now the people that were in charge of comms are not in charge anymore.
Mhm.
So we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Sometimes you just have to do it because
Yes, exactly. Sometimes
when
you-
things work, you have to,
let it fail in order for it to.
yeah, to appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, maybe going back and forth, you did it here or?
Yeah, I'll run to the restroom in a little bit. It's open that door, or do I have to go around?
Yeah, we don't-
I can go around.
yeah. You can come up here. Oh, and go. Yeah, and then you'll be right in the hallway. You go up and down, you'll be right in the hallway. And you should be able to come back, if not,
Perfect. Thank you.
let you focus.
Good morning. Good morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing good?
I'm gonna have to leave. I think that in case I need to leave for whatever reason. But,
Are you okay?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
yeah. This is the one. I'm not gonna-
So you have to, yeah, that's fine, don't worry. And then later we just do the same thing. We do the press.
It should be shorter.
Yeah.
but Yeah.
Okay, so I'll follow your lead. Mhm. You can see his happiness. Never noticed those two. No, but I mean, I've never noticed those two balconies up here.
Those are new.
Oh, those are new, okay.
Yeah,
good.
they were empty.
Mhm.
We had the wheelchairs up here. And, we instead made, accessible
Space.
seating on the
Mhm.
floor, so we never used that. And that allowed us to add in 10 more seats into. Hmm?
The one that came from.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's been a great addition, and we also took out the entire back, space, because remember, there used to be that big black cabinet in the back, and so we took that out and
And
added
more
2
seats.
seats of rows. And, that allowed us to put in a central aisle.
Oh,
which
you
is
didn't
very
have that
helpful.
before. Okay.
Exactly. So,
You've been changing things around to make like the customer. Like, I don't really want them to today.
oh, yeah.
Some space.
Isn't it fantastic? It's a great space. And then have you been up on the mezzanine?
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Even more.
yes, exactly. It's
Their own
cleaned up, it's
space.
more reserved, you know. their own
Which
space.
I had heard about it and I couldn't imagine it until I actually saw
Saw
it.
it,
Because then they opened the window.
Yes, when we put people up there, I said the one, my one request is that we go to advocates.
Imagine.
For putting people up on the mezzanine, we've got to.
But it's very comfortable.
Mhm.
Very, very.
Yeah. Let me go see. It's 10:30, let me go grab my hand.
Modern Spain doing down there? We don't know. I'll give it a few more minutes to let people find their way. Or a minute. Well, welcome everyone to the Meadows Museum. Thank you for joining us this sunny and luckily warmer Saturday morning. I am delighted to be able to offer, we were joking last night that the last night was a celebration, but today is where we get the real meat. This is where we get to really learn more details about the exhibition upstairs. I'll start with a few bits of housekeeping. So as we prepare to take off, please turn your phones to airplane mode. The emergency exits are at the back of the building. So if anyone needs to run out or anything during the lecture, just keep in mind there are exits at the back as well. We are recording today's program, so if there's anything you miss or you're just so enthused you want to hear it again, it should be on our YouTube channel before too terribly long. Also, if you have any questions that come up while you're listening to the lecture, please make a note of them and we will hold all questions until the end. And all that's left is to express my absolute pleasure in welcoming today Iraida Rodríguez-Negrón, who is the curator of Museo de Arte de Ponce, a role she's held for over 10 years. Yes? Three years, but you've been there 10 years. No? In Puerto Rico since I left here 2013.
This is what I get for reading LinkedIn. Okay, she has held the position for 3 years as curator of Museo de Arte de Ponce. And under her care, there is some 5,000 objects. I'm really looking at her. Some 5,000 objects in the collection there. Ms. Rodríguez-Negrón received her BA from the Universidad de Puerto Rico and holds an MA from the George Washington University, as well as an MPhil from the Institute of Fine Arts at New York University. She's published widely and on a very diverse range of topics, everything from Diego Velázquez to Martín Rico, as well as on the collections of Museo de Arte de Ponce. She's also, of course, the organizing curator of The Sense of Beauty, the exhibition you see upstairs. More importantly, and by that I mean selfishly, if you'll pardon the cavelling here, but Iraida was the very first curatorial fellow here at the Meadows. So we're extremely proud to have her back here and to feature her fabulous exhibition upstairs.
At the Meadows, she was responsible for a number of exhibitions and acquisitions that some of you may remember. The Sanchez Coelho miniature that's upstairs, or sorry, Claudio Coelho miniature that's upstairs. Yeah, I'm getting there. I guess it's early for me. I don't know. It's 10:45 or 10:30. What's the deal? And also, if any of you remember the exhibition on the Stewart album some years ago, it's absolutely beautiful. And I'll tell you, Iraida, we still rely on that material when we exhibit and publish on the Stewart album. So all that's left is to welcome Iraida Rodríguez-Negrón to deliver her lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for that lovely intro. As you can imagine, for me, it's been such a whirlwind pleasure of being back at the Meadows and bringing the collection from Museo de Arte de Ponce. But I definitely want to give thanks to the team here at the Meadows, Amanda, Bridget, Anne, who's not here with us. She's happy flying somewhere nice. Patricia, who is in the back, they collaborated immensely in bringing this exhibition here. I also want to remember Miranda Saylor, because when we started talking about the project, Miranda helped us a lot from the beginning, and she traveled to Puerto Rico. So I definitely want to acknowledge that as well. And the team in Ponce who actually made this happen. We will be traveling to 6 venues, and this is the first venue. So we're thrilled that this is finally happening. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about our founder, who is the reason why we are here today, who is the reason why we have such a wonderful collection in Ponce for the people of Puerto Rico. And we're going to leave maybe the more in-depth discussion of some of the works for when we go with Patricia upstairs to the galleries. So I just want to focus more on how the collection developed and how Ferré decided to create a museum for Puerto Rico. So I'm going to start with this quote that was published in 2002, just 1 year short of his death in 2003. And he wrote, "I would visit Don Miguel Poe in his studio on Calle Aurora." And here we have a self-portrait of Miguel Poe, who's a Ponce artist, an artist from Puerto Rico. And he would lend me an art magazine titled La Espera, which I profoundly enjoy. I was living at the time in the house on Calle León. My little room had a balcony on wooden walls, and on those walls I would use thumbtacks to pin up images of paintings by Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Raphael that were in the magazines to better contemplate them. That was my first museum, and really to think that I could go from those paper reproductions to original paintings that are exhibited today in the Museo de Arte de Ponce, it's like a miracle. So he's remembering to when he was a teenager, and he would actually visit Don Miguel Poe, who lived very close to where he lived in Ponce. I'm going to show you a map of Puerto Rico later today so you can actually place where we are located on the southern coast. So he, at his 98 years of age, he was reminiscing on that time when he visited Poe, his first forays as a collector. And when he started to learn about the art history, like Miguel Poe was the first one who actually started teaching him about the history of art. So we always say that Miguel Poe has a very important place in our collection because he put the seed of what eventually became the Museo de Arte de Ponce. So with those informal lessons and later a transcendental trip to Europe in the 1950s, and that is something that definitely ties him to Al Gore Meadows and how the Meadows Museum developed, he decided to create a museum for the people of Puerto Rico that eventually opened in 1959. Here we have a picture of his wife, Lorencita, who accompanied him and who was definitely instrumental in the development of the museum from the beginning. Don Luisa Ferré, it is important to keep in mind that besides being a collector, and he was a very successful industrialist, he later on became the 3rd governor of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico in the late 1960s. So it is a person who a lot of people know, but definitely his legacy as a collector and the founder of the Museo de Arte de Ponce has to be highlighted. And even he considered this his biggest project that he ever undertook in his life, and he mentioned it many times. So here on the screen, I just have a little quote that comes from a speech that was presented in 1964, in April 1964, when they put the corners, when it was celebrated the cornerstone laying ceremony for the museum, the new building where we have our main galleries currently. And he basically described in this paragraph why he was motivated to create the museum during his travels to Europe. And I quote, "When we were able to appreciate how the sense of beauty," and you see just a little pause, the title of how we call this speech is "To Cultivate the Sense of Beauty." So this is the speech that inspired the title of the exhibition, but also the contents of the exhibition, as you will see later. So how the sense of beauty found expressions in even the most remote villages of Europe. We thought that just as our predecessors had brought customs and traditions, it would be helpful to collect a group of artworks to bring to our homeland a piece of the beautiful patrimony of European art, which would serve not only to delight the general public, but also to inspire our compatriots to make more and better art. So he wanted to bring the culture of Europe, particularly, to the people in Puerto Rico, to the artists in Puerto Rico, so they would be able not only to appreciate it, but obviously influence their works. Here we have an image of Don Luisa Ferré right before they founded the museum in this little colonial house in the center of Ponce that still exists. It's the cultural center in the city of Ponce, but now, as I told you before, we later moved in 1965 into this building. And we could say definitely that 65 years later from the moment that the museum was founded in 1959, but then the museum was built in 1965, so 60 years later after that, everything testifies that that mission that Ferré self-imposed, definitely his goals were achieved and even then some, with a collection, as Amanda was saying, that exceeds 4,500 objects, that offers a rich panorama of what is Western art, also Puerto Rican art, and some examples of Latin America. But the museum definitely is the #1 cultural institution in Puerto Rico and is well known all throughout the world. And here we have an inside view of the museum. Here we have an image of Luisa Ferré, which Julius S. held. And most of what I'm going to be talking about today comes directly from the correspondence that was exchanged between them for many years. So in a letter dated in February 9, 1959, that was sent to Julius Samuel Held. It's Samuel Held. Julius Held is a very important, or was a very important scholar of Dutch and Flemish art, particularly of Rubens, and we will talk how that was definitely influential in the development of the collection. So Ferré described the impact of the museum on the island just 3 days after it opened in January 3rd. The museum has continued to be a great inspiration to the people of Puerto Rico. And this is only 30 days after it opened. And I am sure you will be very proud and happy in the future to know that you have made such a wonderful contribution to the cultural development of our island. So that contribution, which Ferré is talking about, began a couple years before, in May of 1957, when Ferré first approached Held because he needed some advice with some works that he had just acquired. So he made a phone call to him, thanks to a friend of his, Alan van Bamberg, who was also a collector who lived in New York and has some business in Ponce. And he wanted him to help him evaluate some acquisitions that he had made at an auction house in New York City. To his surprise, a few days later, he received this letter after it was arranged to visit to the storage place where they had put around 20 works, a little bit over 20 works, that he just went to the auction house, bought paintings without even looking at them, and he reminisces later on in a biography that was published in 1992, how he didn't even examine the works of art. And he held, as you see, he agreed to go and see some of the works, and this was like the first letter that he received. And he very carefully made a list of all the works and divided them between the pictures, which are of good quality and apparently also of good state of preservation. That is something essential for him, particularly because he was married to a conservation person, which we will talk about her in a little bit. Pictures which are problematical either because of damage or over clean condition or because of their quality is more doubtful, and pictures which are worthless or at least not worthy to be considered for a collection that tries to maintain minimum standards. It's very interesting because they say, and I don't know if this is a very like completely real, but imagine Ferré, not Ferré, Held, received this phone call for this person who had absolutely no background in the arts, who had this goal to establish a museum, who had very high expectations of what he wanted to achieve. But you can imagine how surprised he was when he finally saw the things that he had acquired. Of the a little bit over 20 paintings that were acquired, 7 are still in the collection of the museum, including our Bouguereau, which you will see upstairs, which is really funny because Hell didn't like the Bouguereau. This is what he wrote about the painting in the list that he sent back to Ferré. A characteristic work, not my personal taste, but in good condition, and certainly well worth the money paid. It's funny because he wouldn't let go. Later on in other letters, he talks about the Bouguereau again. And this is one of the most favorite works of art that we have in our collection. In another letter in 1958, they were discussing the works that they thought would be popular with the visitors. They hadn't opened the museum yet, and Held wrote to him, "I do not count the Bouguereau since it appeals only to the very shallow minds." Later on, in 1961, they were expecting a visit of this person called Sterling, and he actually wrote to Ferré, "Put the Bouguereau out of sight for Sterling's visit. I fear he might get shocked." So he definitely wasn't a fan of Bouguereau. Like Julius Held, it was definitely a personality, as you will see. So this relationship that was established between them lasted for all their lives, like until the death of Julius Held, for over 40 years. And it is amazing that we actually have all that evidence that documents that collaboration that definitely became a friendship later on. In December of 1963, we have like this copy of a New Year's greeting that Ferré sent to Held, and he wrote to him, "I am deeply indebted to you for having guided me into this great world of beauty." So the beauty always comes back all the time. As I was saying earlier, Held was recommended by Salomon Bamberg, who in a way also became Ferré's first consultant in this endeavor of creating the museum. But it is important to keep in mind also that those first decades for the museum were instrumental for the development of the collection. Between 1959 and 1969, where we have like the depth, like the bulk of those letters, 50% of the paintings that are now in the collection of the museum were acquired. Many of them are collection of European art. Actually, you're gonna see upstairs that 43 of the paintings that are shown in the exhibition were acquired before 1969. So just imagine how important it was that in just such a small period of time, they were able to grow a collection so significant like ours. Those letters, as I was saying, tells us a lot about the relationship between the two, but also about Ferré's evolution as a collector, because at the beginning, he didn't know much and he wasn't pretentious. I always say that Don Ferré was a very visionary because of his goal, but he understood his limitations, and that's why he reached out to specialists like Julius Held. But very early on, other people from the outside, other scholars that visited recognized what he was doing. For instance, in 1962, Juan Antonio Gaya Nuño, who's a Spanish art historian, declared that Ferré would be someone who would make a contribution that could equal that of Lázaro Galdiano, Jose Lázaro Galdiano, and even Andrew Mellon. And as you know, they donated eventually their personal connections to the state and established museums like the Museo Lázaro Galdiano and obviously the National Gallery of Art. But however, there is a very important difference here between Ferré and his counterparts. And it is the fact that Ferré's principal goal from the beginning, which began in 1953, with the acquisition of a painting by Jose Campeche in Jordan, who's our first master of Puerto Rican art, was mainly to create a collection that would be presented for a museum for the people of Puerto Rico. So this wasn't his personal collection. It was something that was done specifically for the museum. 3 years later, in 1956, the Luisa Ferré Foundation was established, and obviously it has guided the development of the collection since then. In 1956, he also acquired this painting by Francisco Yeriz Estero, who's another one, or our second master of Puerto Rican art, who you will meet another work upstairs, who worked in the 19th century, early 20th century, in the milieu of the Impressionists in France and also in Spain. And actually, it's important to highlight that even Lorencita, his first wife, became the first president of the foundation. Van Berg, who's the person that I told you earlier that gave Ferré the phone number for Julius Held, also made a contribution because he kind of became like a quasi advisor to Julius Held, to Ferré, sorry. And these are two acquisitions that Ferré did even before that big purchase at the auction house. On the right side, on the left side, sorry, you see a work attributed to Anthony van Dyck. We still have to study it a little bit more, but it's obviously one of those very popular images based on the original image by Peter Paul Rubens of Isabella Clara Eugenia as the governor of the Spanish Netherlands when she became a widow. And there's this very important work of art that is a sketch for one of the pendentives at the Church of Il Gesù in Rome, which is obviously the mother church of the Jesuit order. So very high quality paintings even from the beginning. So these two actions, the establishment of the foundation and obviously Held's advice, unquestionably accelerated the growth of the collection. The correspondence, particularly that which happened before the opening in 1959, tells us a lot about how they kept on developing the details of how they would collaborate. We could say that at the beginning, definitely Held educated Ferré into all the intricacies of the international art market, because they were not only acquiring works of art in New York, but they were also acquiring works of art in Europe. At the beginning, Held visited many of the local galleries. Then he would write to Ferré, I saw this painting here, or would send pictures. Like in this case, this was actually the first acquisition that was done under the advice of Julius Held, and it's an amazing and impressive painting by Luca Giordano, and the exchange between them when they were figuring out this, or Ferré received the recommendation and then the response, it's super interesting because you can see a little bit into the minds of this art experts during the moment, and of course the art lover in the case of Ferré. And Held wrote about some paintings that they saw at the Gallery of the French & Co. in New York City. There is only one painting which I think is not only very good in quality, but relatively inexpensive. It is by Luca Giordano, and it is called The Artist Paints the Madonna. Though the subject is, of course, the traditional one of St. Luke painting the Madonna. It is really impressive and highly characteristic work, and ideally suited to be the central picture for a museum. I don't think that happened because not many people know that we have this amazing work in the collection, but his response was, I have today received the photos of the painting really recommended at French & Co. The Luca Giordano is very impressive and beautiful, and I'm going to make them an offer. And you think, this is something that we'll talk a little bit about this later, but Luca Giordano, one of the masters of Baroque art in Italy, how were they able to acquire these works? Because during that time, not a lot of museums or institutions were interested in buying Baroque art. And that definitely influenced the development of the collection. And then Held was very proud of his achievement that he was able to convince Ferré. I was very interested to hear that you have bought from them. It was the first indication that you have followed my advice. And he was always very certain to point that out. With regard to the Luca Giordano, and I congratulate you on its acquisition. It is surely an impressive work, and it will dominate its environment wherever it will be exhibited. So hopefully soon we'll be able to exhibit it again. Another work that he recommended this time at the end of 1958 is this painting that you will be able to enjoy when you go upstairs to the exhibition, because it's one of the paintings that is showcased. And it is also very interesting to see what he wrote to Ferré, because in a way it tells us about how they were collecting. Enclosed pictures I recently saw. The best is surely the Coelho. So in a painting, you very familiar with the collection of the museum and the Alonso Sanchez Coelho. I cannot guarantee the attributions, since this would involve me in longer research than I can do at the moment, yet the picture is excellent and worthy of your collection. A particularly charming feature is the red carnation hanging from the collar. The picture is really quite lovely and in good condition. So you see here that they were considering a painting regardless of the attribution. That is definitely something that influenced a lot of what is happening at this moment. I crossed out the name, but because just a few years after the painting came into the collection in 1959, it was definitely established that it was not a work by Alonso Sanchez Coelho. And for all these years, they've always identified it as a work in the circle of Alonso Sanchez Coelho. And you will see upstairs a little bit more. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to talk about that at some point. But now the painting has been attributed to Anthony Smoore. And as you know, Anthony Smoore is Alonso Sanchez Coelho's teacher. So there are definitely relationships between both styles, but this is definitely a work of art that shows more the style of Alonso Sanchez Coelho, like the painting of Alessandro Farnese that you see here in the collection of the Meadows Museum. And I bring these two quotes because they basically illustrate how they were able to acquire such a marvelous collection at a very early stage. Because they decided from the beginning that they were acquired, or that their maxim, like their guide into acquiring works of art, was to acquire works of art that were of quality, independent of the attribution of the work of art. So it relates to what we just saw. First, in a letter in 1958, so just before opening the museum, the only thing that matters is that the picture, any picture that is of high quality. The name or the attribution will eventually take care of itself. I'd much rather buy a picture of quality with an uncertain attribution than a poor picture of a great name. After all, we admire a work of art for what it is in itself. And this is the other quote in 1959. Almost a year after the museum opened, you know that I want above all pictures of quality, irrespective of the fashion in the market, and that is key to why we have the collection that we have. After all, what you're building up is not meant to appeal only to the taste of 1959 nor 1969. A museum is built for the centuries, and as long as we do not let down our standards of quality, we will come out all right, because taste and fashions change. And boy, were they right. This position and the wisdom to purchase pictures of quality in respective of their fashion in the market helped the museum to assemble in only a few years, in probably 2 decades, not just one of the most important collections of Baroque art. And Baroque art meaning Spain, France, Holland, Flanders, Italy. And here we have on the top some of the examples of Baroque art that you're going to be able to enjoy in the exhibition, but also what is recognized as one of the most complete collections of Victorian art outside of Great Britain. And that obviously includes the Pre-Raphaelite masterpieces. And here we have 3 of the paintings that are upstairs in the exhibition that are from that group. Also, this correspondence tells us a lot about how Ferré, as I was saying, developed as a collector, how little by little he started to gain confidence in his own judgment and informing his own judgment for the acquisitions of the works of art. In many occasions, he stressed the importance of doing research on these works, on establishing their provenance, which is something essential, as you know, currently. And he would always say, nothing that we buy of any of these masters should be of a doubtful nature. So he was very certain from the beginning. Also, he got the confidence to even decline some of the recommendations that Julius Held made. As I was saying before, he was a specialist in Dutch and Flemish art, and that's why we have such a strong collection of Dutch and Flemish art. But many times he would write to him, I think we can pass this painting because we should focus on other schools. We have enough of Dutch and Flemish. So it's definitely important that he started to develop that independent judgment. We can see it here in this example of a testimony that we have from a letter where he writes about how he felt when they received this portrait by Elizabeth Louis-Vigée-Lebrun, who is the first work of a female to enter the collection, and definitely shows us how he was able to evaluate the merit of a work of art independent of his advisors. We have received the Vigée-Lebrun, and it is the most beautiful painting, not only because of the technique, but also because of the charming subject. It is important to get paintings not only in good condition by good painters, but also a successful expression of art. The portrait of the Countess de Châtenay, that's how usually the name was pronounced earlier, a painting that will always be attractive to look at. It makes me think of the Vermeer, you know that Vermeer, right? Which has the beautiful girl looking in the same way, but of course with a totally different headdress. What is interesting, though, is that although they were governed by this rule of acquiring works of quality, but of independent of any uncertain attribution, Ferré and even Held had from the beginning, but particularly Ferré, a list of artists that he definitely wanted to be represented in the collection. We can talk about Rembrandt, Rubens, Morales, El Greco, Zurbarán, who's not here, and Goya. These are three works that you're going to be able to enjoy in the exhibition. He had to wait until the end of his life to be able to fulfill his wish of acquiring Morales and El Greco and Goya. But you see those names repeated over and over again. They were considering different works. They were very aware of the problems, particularly in the market of paintings by El Greco and the issues with attributions. So it was literally until the end of his life. The El Greco was acquired in 1999. The Luis de Morales in 2001, and the Goya was the last work that was acquired before Don Ferré died in 2003, and it came into the collection in 2002. So it tells us about how he was so focused as well, and that's why we have such an amazing collection of Spanish art, something similar to what was happening here at the Meadows. Likewise, as you can imagine, Ferré and particularly Julius Held wanted a work by Peter Paul Rubens. As I told you earlier, he was a specialist in the work of Peter Paul Rubens. And they, at one point, had lost faith that they were going to be able to acquire a work of art. And they started thinking possibly of works from his studio, which is funny because that was like the only opportunity or the instance where they would actually consider works from the studio because they were not able to find an authentic Rubens piece. But in the case of Rubens, they were very lucky. I brought this painting just to show you the connection between Held and Ferré. It's a painting done by an American artist in 1959, like the year the museum opened, and you see him holding very proudly one of the catalogs published by Julius Held. But on the right side, you see our Rubens, which you're going to be able to enjoy in the exhibition as well. He was able to acquire it at auction in 1962. That was in June 27, 1962 at Sotheby's in London. A few days earlier, Held had sent a handwritten letter, so he was definitely desperate because all the letters were typed, urging him not to miss the opportunity to acquire this painting by Rubens. The more I think about the Sotheby's sale on the 27th, the more I feel it would be very much worth your while to bid on the Rubens. The chances of getting a genuine Rubens are shrinking. I am sure there will be others, but the prices will be apt for bidding. This is a genuine work by the master. It also has a fine record. He added that at the end. So here we have one of the paintings, as I said, that you're going to enjoy in the exhibition. One of the works that was commissioned by one of Peter Paul Rubens' friends, personal friends, Baltasar Moretus, of the Three Kings. It's like 3 portraits of the 3 kings. One of them is at the National Gallery in DC. Another one is in the press Plantin Moretus Museum in Belgium, and then we have the other one in Ponce. After receiving the painting, he was elated, imagine, and after learning the news of the purchase particularly, and then congratulated him. Naturally, I am delighted with the purchase of the Rubens. Now you can sit on your laurels for a while. For this is, of course, a great achievement, and I am happy to see that you took the opportunity when it came. And here we see Ferré, very happy as well, receiving the painting in the museum. That's actually the painting. It's not a poster. It's a beautiful photograph that actually tells us so much about the personality of Ferré. The letters, obviously, they're very plentiful. Like, as I was saying, they corresponded all throughout their lives. And of course, they definitely deserve an exhaustive story, which has not been done before and are completely outside of the scope of our talk today. But I think this brief commentary on just a fraction of it, particularly during those first years, offers a valuable perspective on the early development of the Museo de Arte Ponce's collection, Ferré's vision for it, and his beginnings into becoming a collector. Another not less important aspect of what we find in the letters is this person that we have here, the crucial role that was played by Ingrid Held. As I was saying earlier, Julius Held's wife is Ingrid Held. She was a conservator, and she was associated at one point with the New York Historical Society. But all the paintings that were either acquired or were being considered to be acquired at that moment, all of them went through the studio of Ingrid Held. So she was able to see all of them, do treatment to many of the works. And it is very interesting because Held was very sure of always sharing with Ferré his opinions, or her opinions, sorry, about the paintings that we're considering. Particularly, this happened with this work by Lucas Cranach the Elder, which you will be able to enjoy as well in the exhibition. On April 6, 1960, Held wrote to Ferré, "She is simply crazy about the picture. She thinks it's the finest Cranach she has seen in many years." And then later on, he reiterated, like 2 weeks later, Pim, that's what they call her, is tremendously impressed with the Cranach. One of the most important, possibly, works that Ingrid Held did on one of the paintings in the collection was the cleaning and restoration of the Immaculate Conception. So we have another version of the Immaculate Conception, like the Meadows, that was purchased in late November 1959. It is very interesting because Ferré obviously was very happy with this acquisition. This is probably one of the paintings with the best provenance that we have in the collection. It belonged to the Descalz Carmelites in Madrid, possibly came out of Madrid because during the Napoleonic invasion. And Ferré wanted it to be at the museum in January 1960 for the opening of for the celebration of the opening of the museum. So he's buying the painting in November and he wanted it in Puerto Rico in January with all the treatment done to it. So he writes to Ferré, like, to Held, please make him clean the painting and restore it. I need it for the celebration. Held definitely took this opportunity to write this very long letter describing all the different steps that a conservation specialist would have to do or take in order to clean a painting and restore a painting, particularly one so important like this one that he considered Held what so far is probably the most important picture added to your collection. Ferré understood, and then he, pushed the celebration a little bit farther down. We have here an image of when he finally arrived in Puerto Rico, and he allowed Pim to do the work that needed to be done in the painting. And I think probably this is one of the first indications that he definitely had to establish a conservation center or laboratory in Puerto Rico. And thankfully, we were able to open one in 1979. So the museum is able to take care of their own paintings. And we have a fabulous staff, particularly with Lydia Aravena. So the museum, and this is a painting later on, he was definitely in love with this painting. Here we have images of the first site of the museum that, as I mentioned, opened in 1959 in a colonial house in the center of Ponce. 9 rooms were habilitated, like you see here in this picture in the center, because this is actually a painting picture, sorry, of the balcony, but you actually see paintings hanging also in the balcony. People thought about climate control completely different then. 71 paintings were exhibited, among them paintings from all the different European schools, also American paintings, and 7 paintings from the Puerto Rican artists. So it definitely highlights how Puerto Rican art was important in the collection from the beginning. Just 11 days after the opening, Ferré wrote to Held, "The museum has been quite a success and visitors up to 200 per day are coming." So from the beginning, he was very well aware of the important project that he was creating for the people of Puerto Rico. During that time, the museum initially, like very immediately, probably also because of the connections that Held had and the possibility of spreading the news of what was happening in Ponce, began to garner international recognition, particularly from the academic community. One of those was the German-born Spanish art historian Martin Soria, who's the Spaniards, like the Hispanists know him very well, who visited the museum to give a lecture in 1960, and who, according to Ferré, declared, and he was definitely not a specialist in geography, is the best museum in all of South America without exception. The recognition was definitely also due to a series of articles that were published during those first years, motivated also by Ferré, because he was the one who wrote to Held, maybe you should write something, maybe publish something in the art news, or to be able to spread the news. So in 1961, in July of 1961, an article talking about the new museum in Ponce was published in the Burlington magazine. And if you know, that's one of like the most important journals of art history. After that, many letters started arriving from academics, from students, from galleries who wanted to sell paintings to the collection. So definitely the word was spread out very quickly. Other authors who visited the museum, the Marqués de Lozoya wrote an article in the Goya magazine, Gaya Nuño, Blanco y Negro, Jose Gudiol, which you know as well, the Hispanist, also in Goya, reviews in the New York Times, René Taylor in the Antiques, and Margot and Rudolph Whitaker, which art historians know those names as well, who wrote an article in the Apollo magazine. And I mentioned René Taylor, because René Taylor is definitely the third very important person in the story we are telling today. We see an image here. I had cut the image before. René Taylor on the left, Ferré, and Julius Held, and of course, Flaming June in the background. Definitely, he was a member of the triumvirate who was able to achieve the amazing collection that we have. He was a specialist in Spanish art of the Golden Age. He was a British scholar who had taught at the University of Granada. He became the first curator of the museum in 1961. Then in 1962, became the director of the museum. And here we see them inside one of those galleries in the first building of the museum, with Our Lady with the Pink here, and with our other very famous Luca Giordano painting that we have in the collection. I think this is the other Luca Giordano here that we saw earlier. It's very interesting because, as I was saying before, Spanish art is a very important part of the collection, and we definitely have to attribute this to René Taylor as well. He defended the presentation of Spanish art even when Held wasn't too fond of it. And I've actually heard, the Lydia, our conservator, told me not so long ago that every time that Held will visit, they would actually hide many of the sculptures, the polychrome sculptures, because Held didn't want to see them. And some of the sculptures that you're actually going to see upstairs. So, and he felt the need to defend it. There is even a memo that he wrote to Ferré explaining the importance of Spanish art, particularly in a context like Puerto Rico with all the Spanish lineage. One of the things that we definitely have to attribute to René Taylor was the acquisition of Flaming June, because he was the one who found it in a corner, in a gallery in London, They did a trip. He traveled with Ferré to Europe to acquire works of art in 1963. He went into the London Gallery of Jeremy Stephen Mass, who was one of the few galleries who was specializing in Victorian art, because at that moment, Victorian art was not popular. So once again, quality, not fame. And he saw the painting and immediately recognized that this would definitely be something that Ferré would like. And then he brought Ferré. And I have to do this preamble. There are so many legends around the story of Flaming June from the beginning. I think from the moment that it was created. We know that in the letters, he hardly doesn't talk about the painting. He just talked about the beautiful painting that was published in the art news in the front cover, just telling Hell that they had acquired that painting, but nothing so exciting like we see for other works. He would later say that he fell in love at first sight, although I heard a story not so long ago that he saw the painting, he decided not to buy it, then he got into a ship and went to travel to France. And as soon as he arrived in France, went back because he couldn't sleep thinking about the orange lady. So there are many things around it. And then I know a lot of mythology, but I found this quote, which I saw very interesting in a letter that Held sent to Ferré as a response for the news of the acquisition of Flaming June. And he says, "Thanks for the color plate of Leighton Flaming June. Quite a picture. A kind of 19th century variation on the theme of Bernini's Saint Teresa." Isn't that beautiful? So as I was saying before, like this vision to be able to acquire works of art that were of quality definitely supported the growth of the Victorian art collection in a period of around 15 years, we could say. Between 1959 and 1974, they were able to acquire over 50 pieces, including paintings, drawings, and sculptures of Victorian art. Obviously, within that, we have our amazing collection of pre-Raphaelite art. And it is important to recognize that Ferré definitely was one of the forerunners in this new appreciation for Victorian art. In one of his letters in 1958, he wrote about the Pre-Raphaelites. "I am very fond of the Pre-Raphaelite school, and I think that it will come back in public esteem." So this was even before. So going back to Flaming June, as you will see, and I decided to bring this image just to illustrate another very important and interesting story around Flaming June, and it's her frame. This picture shows us the 6 paintings that Frederick Lord Leighton was going to submit to the summer exhibition at the Royal Academy in 1895, including Flaming June in one of them. This is the photograph that I showed you before. What do you think that is different? And here we have an article that was published in another magazine that shows the frame that we still have in the museum, but it's obviously not the original frame. Victorian artists, Raphaelite artists, they were very particular in designing the frames for their paintings. But we didn't know. We had no knowledge of this picture until the 1990s, when our 3D conservator went to a conference, saw this picture, and suddenly we knew how the original frame looked like. At that moment, they were organizing the exhibition for the centenary of the death of Frederick Lord Leighton, and they were able, with the support of Christie's, find the place where the original frame was done, even find moldings for the original frame, and they were able to do the replica, as you see here. So what you see upstairs is the replica, because the original frame, when Flaming June reappeared in the 1960s, because she kind of disappeared between the 1930s and the 1960s, she was so undervalued that they decided, or not that they decided, she didn't sell. And they basically sold even the frame before her. Because it was a very Renaissance style tabernacle frame, and it was more valued than even the painting. So we never knew anything. We still don't know where the frame is, although I heard another legend that I'm gonna look into it, but I don't believe it. And we were able to do the replica. Not so long ago, the painting was exhibited at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it looks prettier here. Wait till you see her. And then you can actually see her next to another one of the paintings that was presented at the Royal Academy that summer. And where you see the Lacrimae that actually has the original frame still, so you kind of see the difference, but they decided when they did the replica just to keep it original and not try to fake it. These are some of our pre-Raphaelite treasures, Edward Burne-Jones. We have the Swan Song by Edward Burne-Jones, The Death of King Arthur, which is an amazing painting that probably covers this whole wall, or a painting in which he works for over 20 years. And then here we have, I brought this picture of Ferré playing the piano. He was an accomplished, educated classical pianist right in front of the painting, so you kind of get an idea of how big the painting is. I know that I have to start wrapping up, but just to show you the museum, this is some of the studies for the painting that are still in the collection. The museum grew rapidly. They definitely recognized the need for a new museum. And here we have a picture of our building designed by Edward Rollstone, who was the designer of the Kennedy Center, also of the MoMA in New York. And here we have our building that opened in 1965 that was declared by Fernando Chueca Goitia, also a very important historian of Spanish architecture, as the Parthenon of the Caribbean. And this is the building that houses our main galleries. This is a celebration for its opening. And here we have Ferré in one of the hexagonal galleries that were actually his idea to be able to have. There are some windows that are not shown here, but he wanted a lot of Caribbean illumination inside the building. It is important, the museum, because as I was saying before, not only has an important collection of European art, but also an important collection of Puerto Rican art from the beginning. This is the first place where a permanent collection of Puerto Rican art was displayed for the people of Puerto Rico, contemporary Puerto Rican art, and within the context of European art, which is definitely something that was not seen anywhere else. When the museum opened, Ferré had said that supposedly he had around 200 paintings that were acquired, but definitely immediately they saw the need to create a new museum. And here is the map that I told you that I was going to bring, just to show you where Ponce is located in the southern coast of the island. Why Ponce? Because this was the birth city of Ferré. That's where he had his business. That's where he was born. Ponce, definitely the cultural center for Puerto Rico. Even from colonial times, San Juan was the center of the military, was the center of the church as well. But in Ponce, we had the development of culture. Many of the haciendas of coffee and the sugar plantations happen in the south. So definitely that fostered the development of the museum. We have an image here of our iconic stairs that hopefully we will be able to go up soon. As I'm sure many of you know, in 2020, early 2020, in January, we experienced an earthquake of the southern coast of Puerto Rico, and it definitely impacted the foundation of the building, and we had to close, and we haven't been able to open the museum since then. Obviously, after that, the main galleries. After that, the pandemic hit, so obviously that difficulted the development of the programming in the museum. We do have an annex building behind the 1965 building that was opened in 2010, where we put up exhibitions all the time. We have the conservation lab that keeps on working. We were able to safely store there many of the collections. But since then, we've been establishing collaborations in the island, but also outside, loans that have been traveling, smaller exhibitions, and now the Sense of Beauty that allows us to keep our collection accessible to the public, to show it to new audiences. And we're very thrilled that we're starting the presentation here at the Meadows Museum. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy.
I believe we have time for a few questions, if you'll indulge us.
Here we have a microphone, so whoever wants to make a. Where's the microphone here?
Run, Jose Maria. The microphones for the YouTubes.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's a bit loud, so be careful.
I'm just curious. Hello? Uh, you talked about them exchanging photographs of potential acquisitions. And I'm trying to remember when color photography really became accessible. Were those black and white photographs or color photographs?
You know, I have no idea, but probably they could even be black and white.
I would think so.
For instance, if you go to the Frick collection in library, the Frick Art Reference Library, they have boxes of images of works of art. Most of them are black and white. So
Right.
probably many of them were black and white. And imagine the impression when he finally was able to see those in color. And
But
I
he-
think that's why it was so important for not only health to see them, but for Pim, like his wife, to see them before the decision. Yeah.
But he was agreeing to acquire works of art that were he was seeing in black and white instead of.
He was not the only one. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll just pass it.
Okay, it's a breathtaking exhibit. Thank you so much. And if you addressed this and I missed it, I apologize. What is the origin of the name June?
That's another one of the mysteries that surround the painting. Particularly if you think about it, the painting belongs to this period called aestheticism. And for the artists of that period in Victorian art, their main focus was to show a beautiful image, not only the painting, but the frame as well, and not specifically to show a message or present a message or present something with a specific meaning. We don't know if June refers to the character because she is not Mary nor Dorothy, which are the two models that posed for her. We don't know if he's referring to June, the summer, the summer month. Actually, they translated the title. It's a very arbitrary translation into Spanish. Sol ardiente de junio. I don't even like using it because who knows exactly what is being represented. So definitely it doesn't refer to something in particular that we know for sure.
Thank you so much for illuminating us this morning and with all of these glorious details. As somebody who's never been to Puerto Rico and always wanted to go, when do you think you will be opening?
So we are hoping 2028. I know that we're already planning a trip, a visit to Puerto Rico, because I don't know if you're aware that one of your masterpieces will be visiting the museum once it opens, one of the spring months in hopefully 2028. The construction, like the plans are ready. We are looking for contractors and hopefully it will begin in the summer.
Thank you, and we'll get up a trip of all the members too.
And I'll receive you.
Was this building completely destroyed? or are
No,
you
no, no.
renovating it back?
Let me show you very quickly. I have many slides, but I wanted to show you. This is the building right after the earthquake. So mostly the ceiling fell, which is made of gesso, and that's going to be replaced completely. But the main problem was in the foundation. The building is held up primarily by the columns, by the system of columns, like a classical temple. And the foundation, the pilots underneath the columns are compromised. So what the solution that they've come up with is actually to put kind of two bookends at each end of the museum that we actually support in the eventuality of any movement in the future. It will be able to move without any problems. This is obviously the aftermath. Only two sculptures were damaged, and you see one of them here, fixed immediately. At the beginning, they only wanted to cover them with paper, but eventually they decided to remove everything from the building. In a period of less than 2 weeks, a group of less than 10 people were able to move everything in excess of 500 objects to storage. Thankfully, we had that other building behind that we were able to store the paintings and the works of art.
I think one more question or shall we? Well, I will say, first, let's thank Iraida for her excellent presentation. Thank you. And for any of you who still have a question hanging on your lips, there is a gallery talk upstairs, hosted by Iraida and our curator, Patricia Rodriguez, Manzano Rodriguez. Too many Rodriguezes.
That's how we are everywhere.
And at noon, please join us in the studio for an art making activity as well. So please enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's like a sad picture to end the thing with. We'll see her.
Yeah.
Yes, especially because you don't see the head below.
All right, my dear, let's get you tucked away.
Turn off the Zoom or something, so it
Yes.
stops recording. I don't know how to do. Everything go well? Perfect.